Well, thanks for joining us tonight for the Minot Area Chamber EDC Government Affairs Committee candidate forum for the Minot City Council. This is our first candidate forum ahead of the November 2022 general election. My name is Mark Lyman. I am a member of the Chamber EDC Government Affairs Committee and the MAC EDC Economic Development Specialist, and I'll be the moderator tonight for this forum. Thanks for tuning in online and on TV. If you're watching live online and would like to propose a question to be asked of both of the candidates tonight, please feel free to drop that question in the chat or comment section of the Facebook page or YouTube page that you might be watching this on. We will take those suggestions and ask them if possible. We are scheduled to go until 7:30 tonight, or we might be done earlier, depending on the brevity of the responses and the amount of input from the public. We've already received about a dozen or so questions. Some of them are repeats from other questions we've already intended to ask, but we would encourage anyone who's here with us to keep asking, writing down your questions, and we'll see if we can get to those. And again, online, if you would please, and have some questions that will be asked of both the candidates, as both candidates will have a chance to answer all questions. We will get started then. Let's get to know our candidates, Roscoe Streyle and Scott Burlingame, two candidates for one open seat on the Minot City Council. First things first, Scott, we'll start with you. Please take 1 minute to introduce yourself. Tell us why you're running for Minot City Council.
All right, before we get into that, I'd like to wish Roscoe and his wife a happy anniversary. I'm sure there's a million things that he'd rather be doing right now, but I appreciate the fact that he came, and I hope that when they're done tonight, he can, spend a little time a little bit more appropriately on his anniversary. So,
perfect.
So first off, my name is Scott Burlingame, and I'm running for Minot City Council for a few reasons. First and foremost, I believe we have a child care crisis in Minot, and it's time for our local city government and our local economic development efforts to focus on it a little bit more. The biggest part that we need to do that is because it affects workforce, and anybody you talk to, we know that workforce is an issue. Second, I want to see our city grow, but grow in a smart way, in a way that doesn't burden our taxpayers with unnecessary expenses in the next few years going forward. And third is I want to see a sustainable budget, and a budget that relies less on property tax and more on other streams of revenue that does not burden our homeowners in a way that it is. A little bit about myself. I'm married to my wife, Kim, for 24 years now. We got a couple of kids. My 16-year-old son, Martin, is a sophomore at Central Campus, and he wants to finish up school as soon as possible and get a job and make all the money in the world. My oldest son works here in town, and him and his girlfriend brought a little joy into our world. I gave him a kiss before I came here tonight, our little grandson, Lucas. He was born on December 31st of last year. I think the last kid born in Minot last year. So they're the real reasons and the important reasons I do this. I spent my entire career serving people and community. Currently, I'm the executive director of Independence Incorporated, a nonprofit here in this community. I've served our community on a local level, on a state level, and on a national level. I've held numerous leadership roles. This isn't my first time, being in a situation where we have Robert's Rules of Order or anything like that. And I'm running because I feel like I can bring something new to the council, and I can help make Minot a better place to live, work, and play for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Let's go to Roscoe. Take a minute to introduce yourself. Tell us why you're running for Minot City Council.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for doing that, and I appreciate the happy anniversary wishes, Scott. And when I told my wife this, she just said, well, you're usually pheasant hunting anyway, so like true, not this year. But anyway, I appreciate this is great to do this, engage the public. I appreciate the chamber doing that. I think you guys provide a valuable resource to the city. So I've been married for 15 years today. I've got 3 kids. One's a senior, one's a freshman, girls, and then third grader boy. Obviously, I was appointed to city council in July, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Didn't get a full crack at the budget. The budget was largely crafted during that time, but we did during those times. We were able to make some cuts that were needed, I think, on stuff that wasn't necessary this time, and redirect some money back into road infrastructure, which I think infrastructure investments are very important. Have you seen around town? The city's done a very good job the last year. Improving the roadways, the infrastructure. Obviously, the flood wall is very important. And going into the next budget cycle, there's going to be more money there. So to me, it's all about economic growth to me. Sales tax growth has to be our #1 priority. As far as the property taxes, we cannot keep raising property taxes. We actually cut the mills back for the 2023 budget, which I think is probably the only political subdivision that did that. So I'm proud of the fact that we did that. I think we need to invest more money in economic development. Like I said, sales tax. If you look at other communities like Bismarck, for example, significantly less property tax burden than we do. Well, it's because they've got a bigger, broader tax base. And that's what we must do here. We need to grow the population of the city. We need to grow the economy. And I think with my legislative connections and business experience, budgeting, when I was in the legislature, I used to sit on appropriations that dealt with half of the state's budget. So I understand that portion of it. So I think that's what I bring to the table as far as it's a well-rounded council, and I think that's the strength that I'd bring.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe and Scott, for kicking us off. Let's start our first question. Both of you already started to touch on this just a little bit, but what would be your highest priorities for the next 4 years if you were to be elected? Scott, you started last time, so Roscoe, will go to you first. What are your highest priorities for the next 4 years if you were to be elected? 1 minute.
And we will only be elected for 2 years, I think. So for the next 2 years anyway, but
Perfect.
At filling out the mayor's term for this. But the plan that the city put together with the accelerated flood protection plan, finishing that quicker, the city did a very good job in crafting that policy, and I think that's incredibly important. That would be one of my top priorities, to work with the legislature, the governor, who's a friend of mine, and try to get that passed. And what that would do is complete the project in 10 years versus the 14 plus we're at now, which, as everybody knows, inflation, that would save the state and locals at least $50 million. So I think that's critically important. Like I said, economic growth and population growth, we have to grow this city. The problem we have right now, as I see, is where are you going to build a house? Like, there is not a lot of available land right now to grow this city. So we want to grow it. Well, where are you going to grow it at? There's infield stuff that we need to do in Northwest Minot by the school. I think that's critically important. 55th by Ned Rose, there's a lot of infrastructure in the ground there. So I think we have to provide available land, tax incentives, whatever we need to do to encourage development in this city, because we need a bigger tax base, or broader tax base, to take the pressure off property taxes. So to me, those are a few priorities. I will not vote for a mill increase, just like last time. I will not do it next budget either.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, same question.
So as I mentioned in my intro, kind of my three primary criteria, but I want to focus a little bit, and Roscoe's correct. We have to work on building and increasing the size of our pie, and we have to do that through economic development. But I really think that economic development right now starts with people. We need people. We need people filling our jobs, and each individual person who works in our community becomes their own little economic engines for this community. So when we can work on growing that, we can increase that. And I think that one of the most important places to start is we have a high school and a college that are graduating hundreds of people every year. So what are we doing as a city and as an economic development community to engage those youth and to get those youth part of what we do, because we want them staying here. The work that the city's been working on with Minot State and with Dakota College at Botno for career and technical education is a good first start. But we need to do more. We need to make youth want to choose this community, because they are the workforce of the future, and I don't think we're focused on that anywhere near enough. I also agree flood protection is extremely important. If we can knock down and get flood protection done on a quicker basis, that will save the taxpayers dollars, and it'll allow us to either sooner decrease property taxes or focus on other future economic infrastructure needs. And finally, we need a variety of housing. We need housing at all levels. But I think that the first thing that we need to do is to develop that infill plan. We need to find places where the current infrastructure exists and build from that. And we need to identify dilapidated buildings and open buildings within this community and make those open and available for business.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Let's start with you, Scott, on this next one. The question is out there. What would you like to see done with the funding from the sales tax penny that is currently going towards NAWS funding once the Northwest Area Water Supply Project is completed in about 2 years or so? What happens to that portion of the sales tax funding once NAWS is completed in 2 years or so? Scott, you go first.
We have to absolutely turn that around very quickly and put it towards flood control. That is the next biggest thing. It's a little bit like your family budget. You pay off one bill, you start paying off the next biggest bill. And the quicker we can speed that up, is, as everybody knows, the best time to have paid for anything was 2 years ago. And that's only going to continue to be more of the case as we push that along further into the future. The cost of flood control is only going to get more expensive. So the more we can invest in it now, the better it's going to be. I want to have the conversation about what we do after that fact. But right now, there's no question about the fact that that needs to go towards flood control.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, same question then. What do you want to see with that funding from the sales tax penny that's currently going towards NAWS once NAWS is complete in 2 years?
Great question, because it'll be one of the most important decisions we make. And that decision is definitely towards bond payments for flood protection. All in, the city's going to be over $100 million when this thing is done with bonds. And that's going to take a revenue stream. And that is the revenue stream that I think is appropriate for it, the sales tax. Being it's a basin-wide project, it's not just a City of Minot project, but yet this community and people that shop here are paying for that. So I think that's definitely the place it needs to go. First and foremost, now could a portion of that be used for facilities or other areas? For sure. But what a cent right now raises 11.5 million roughly. We want to grow that. I'd like to see that continue to grow to 12 million, to 12.5 million. Now that penny or half cent is worth more, and we can do other things other than just pay debt. But that is obviously the number one priority, and we're lucky. We've got an incredibly talented finance manager at the city who went out and borrowed money at incredibly low rates. So we've locked in a good portion of the bonds right now, and going forward, obviously interest rates are up, so the cost of money is going to go up. So the quicker we can shift that over, the better. Maybe it's the end of 23, maybe it's the middle of 24, but it's certainly a very important decision, and be happy to be here to discuss what we should do with that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. A lot of questions are coming in. Keep those questions coming in online and here in person. This one goes back to something both of you have already touched on, but they want to drill down a little bit further. So the question is, and we'll start with Roscoe first, how would each of you, or in your positions as city councilman, how would you help the city draw or entice new businesses to our city, or make it easier for people to grow their current business? Roscoe.
Well, I think tax policy has a lot to do with where capital flows, and it's expensive to live in this city comparatively to other communities. Now we've got flood protection projects, we've got NAWS, we've got other issues that other communities don't have to pay for, so we got to keep that in mind. But I think just keeping the property tax in check, and any growth in government should be funded through another avenue. I just don't think the property tax increases every year is a good solution for any political subdivision. And so to me, we got to flip the way of thinking. So I think the city, and I'm not saying they don't do this by and large, but we need to flip our mindset and almost be in a position, not where we're begging businesses to come here, but we're telling our story, we're cheerleading, we're putting packages together, whether it's cutting the red tape as far as getting developments moving quicker. MAC EDC should lead point on this, I think. I don't think the city should have an economic development position. I think we should partner even stronger than we have with the chamber. And in this last budget, we did increase the chamber budget by $100,000 and to work on workforce development issues like Scott mentioned. So that was a key first step. But I think just being more business friendly, open for business, and aggressively pursuing them versus saying, kind of sitting back and waiting. I think we gotta tell our story better.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, the same question. How would you, or as a member of the city council, how would the city help to draw or entice new businesses to our city, or make it easier for people to grow their current business?
So first off, let's talk about enticing new people to the city. I'd like to tell them, hey, you know what? When you open up a new business here, we've got the daycare available to you that's not available in other cities. I'd like to be able to tell them that we've got an engaged young workforce ready to hop into your jobs. I'd like to tell them that we've got a tax system and a budget that's been holding even, that's not going up or down or scaring people or anything like that. We're holding our, a consistent budget. We've got some work to do to get there, but that's the kind of things I want to start with. I also agree with Roscoe. There's so many good things going on in this community. I love this community. This community is my home. It's a place that is just wonderful, and we have got to be louder about that and scream about it and tell people how excited we are about the potential within this community, because we are going to be able to attract people on a regional and on a national level in ways that other places aren't. So I just think that there's so many things that we can do, but it all goes back to starting with workforce and starting with sustainable budgeting and starting with smart growth within our community.
Okay, thank you. Scott, you will go first on this question. The individual asked, in light of the recent request for funding from the Magic City Sales Tax Fund, would you be in favor of giving taxpayer monies to healthcare facilities? So the question is, would you be in favor of giving Magic Fund money or taxpayer money to healthcare facilities?
I have to be honest with you, I've thought about this question quite a bit as of late. So just to make sure everybody is up to speed, the Magic City Committee has asked for $3 million for partially for Trinity in the emergency services area. And it's really went through a head. First off, a couple of things come to mind. First off, $3 million is a heck of a lot of money. It may not seem a lot of money for, people that are dealing with budgets at, the size of the city, but it's a heck of a lot of money for a lot of people out there. Secondly, it's going to add less than 10 jobs for that $3 million. I'm a little concerned about that as well. And I also ask, were they going to do it with or without the money? Is this actually bringing something new, or is just this trying to find financing using some creative ways? I think there's so much potential that can be done with the Magic Fund. I applaud the mayor for setting up a committee to look at that. But I don't know. Having a healthy community to live in, having a good quality health care within your community is one of those things that we need to recruit businesses and employees. But I worry about the size of that, and I worry about the impact of that $3 million.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, same question. Would you be in favor of giving taxpayer monies to healthcare facilities from the Magic Fund?
So yeah, this request has come through a couple committees now. Obviously, the Chamber Board recommended it at 2.7. The steering committee came back at 3 for ER equipment, which would expand the ER capabilities in our community. Trinity's a nonprofit, been paying property tax, over $3 million they paid in property tax in the last year or so on all their properties. When that hospital does open, then they're a nonprofit, so there will be no property taxes. It's a $500 million investment in the community. It's a community hospital in a sense because it's a nonprofit. So to me, I think it's worth looking at. The Magic Fund, I actually chair the committee that the mayor, Tom, appointed. We've met a few times, trying to tweak the rules a little bit to get this money working. There's too much money sitting there doing nothing, and I think it's got to get to work. That doesn't mean you just sprinkle it around to every little project, but to me, I think it's worth looking at. I haven't fully decided how I would vote on that when it comes, but generally speaking, I think it's probably would be a good investment for the city. With some strings, however. The strings that were recommended were, what are you going to do with your properties downtown? So to me, that is a big, big issue. Those will go back on the tax rolls when they're not used for a nonprofit purpose. So there will be tax revenue coming in there too. But to me, those buildings are critically important that we come up with a solution. I think I'd love to talk about that in another question on what could be done with those.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. By my notes, I think Roscoe starts next. Let's focus back on property taxes. Lots of questions here on property taxes. You've touched on some of these things already, but let's dive into it a little bit more. What initiatives would you support from your position as a city councilman that would help keep property tax funding lower than it currently is right now? Roscoe, we'll start with you.
Well, it goes back to economic development. That's the number one issue, I think, and then cleaning up some of the long-term infrastructure projects that we have. If we can get those on bond payments more aggressively than we would have, that's going to save us tens of millions of dollars in interest over the 30-year life of some of these bonds. So some of that's important. I think we got to be super lean and mean on the new positions that we're at. There was About half of the positions that were requested in the initial budget were funded. To me, when I look at any position, I assign a $4 million cost to that. Just general numbers, you're going to have it for 30, 40 years. So you're not making a 1-year decision, a 2-year decision. You're making a 40-year decision in my mind. Well, that includes healthcare, salary, retirement, et cetera. So the leaner and meaner we can become, the better. That's what private business is doing. The city's doing that right now. There's a lot of open positions. In the police department, for example, they're strapped. They need more help there. The healthcare side for the city staff, I don't think it's a great plan for them. I think it's too expensive. I think they're spending too much of their own money on it. The taxpayers are spending too much money. I think they should be given the choice to go into a high deductible plan with an HSA, that the city funds a big chunk of that for them. What does an insurance company know about your health care benefits or a Cadillac plan? I would rather the employee have control of their health care decisions and their money in a savings account. This alone would save the city over $500,000 a year. So there's simple things that we can do. It's going to take some leadership. It's going to take a different mindset, but I think cost cutting through the health care piece, which is better for the employees, better for the taxpayer, and then the budgeting of lean and mean on the staff, and of course, growing the economy.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, same question. What initiatives would you support from your position as a city councilman that would help keep property tax funding lower than it currently is right now?
So I touched on this earlier, but I want to hit back on it again. Looking at smart growth to our community, anytime that we expand our community out, it increases the cost. So when you look at some of the growth that's happened on the edges of our communities, that's cost our taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. And that's been part of the reason that our city has continued to grow as far as needing new trucks and a new fire station and new employees and stuff like that. It's because we're growing out so far. Anything that we can do, if we have an aggressive infill plan to take use of existing infrastructure, it can help keep our property taxes level. Furthermore, is we have to have smart budgeting. And part of smart budgeting is not having ups and downs. And a big part of that is by maintaining our employee workforce. I have talked to so many employees of the city, and not one of them want worse health care. Not one of them want anything to do with monkeying around with that stuff. They are legit. I have heard from so many of them of how if that happens, they are going to leave. And there's nothing more expensive than employees leaving and having to retrain those. We've got to do better at that. We can't mess around with that. Right now, we have a policeman or a policewoman on our force. They can go work at the county and get 100% health insurance paid. They can go, our engineers in our city, they can go work at a private engineering place here in town, 100% employee paid. I think we pay 82% now. And we're talking about monkeying with that. That's irresponsible. The employees don't want that. It's going to cost us too much, and we cannot go that way.
Okay, a quick follow-up to that in the same vein. Scott, maybe, and we're trying to hit it on 30 seconds on this one. Are there any cost savings you would ask the staff specifically to explore? Scott, 30 seconds.
Cost savings, I would ask this. I just feel like sometimes government has the amazing capacity to step over a dollar to save a dime. And nickel and diming too much when it comes to employee retention right now is focusing on things like we're not in a world where we have such a massive workforce incentive. Employers that are trying to be competitive in the modern workforce aren't asking to nickel and dime stuff right now. I would look them in the eyes. I would have conversations with them. I may say, we may not be able to add a new employee right now. We may have to wait till we fill this position. I think there's real decisions we can make like that. But I think that we have to be very careful when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Okay, Roscoe, a quick one then, same thing. What cost savings would you ask the staff to explore? 30 seconds.
Well, I just want to respond to Scott's comment about healthcare. You know how much it would save if we would go to the PERS plan, which has in the high deductible plan? It would save a family, every person, city staff that has family policy, it would save them $3,501 per year out of their paycheck. And my proposal would be to give them $250 a month to their HSA. So we're talking a family plan of over $6,000 more. The deductible goes up. Yes, that is true. But you would get $6,000 more in your paycheck, in your health savings account per year. That's a significant amount of money. I did vote, I actually seconded Carrie's motion to increase the cost share to go from 80 to 82 and 90 to 92. That is about $120,000 a year cost to the city. I thought it was worth it because I think they're paying too much for the healthcare. That's what I think. This is a better solution for them. And if they don't want to do it, they don't have to. It's optional.
Okay, let's go back
But let's give people the option.
Let's go back to
choose their
the
own.
original question now, too. I want to make sure you have a few seconds to answer that. What cost savings would you ask the staff to explore?
Well, that's the big one right there. That's a massive cost savings to themselves and to the taxpayers. Over $500,000 and $6,000 in their pocket per year. I would say that's a pretty darn good incentive right there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let's ask a specific question. This one's for both candidates. I'm going to ask it a little different than the individual wrote it out here. It can be said that a city should be run like a business. It can be said that a city should be run like a nonprofit. Scott, I think you said that recently. It could be said that a government should be run like a government. I mean, there are different ways to run government. Which of these do you agree with, and why or why not? Roscoe, I think it's your turn to start first on this one. What should a city be run by or like?
A little bit of all the above. I like Scott's analogy used on a nonprofit, a couple weeks ago when we were at another forum. Business is more nimble. They're quicker. They are leaner and meaner. I think that's the piece that is important for the business side, the nonprofit. All of them are working on a shoestring budget, unfortunately. It's just the way of the world there. So I think there's a lot to learn from the way they're budgeting. They're month to month in some cases in some of the smaller nonprofits. And as a government, I mean, businesses can't provide nonprofits can't provide all of the city services, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious. So I think there's a blend of all of them makes sense to me. But the business friendly, and what I mean for that is, I mean, superior customer service. And I think we provide a really good customer service in this city. And very good on the, obviously snow removal is always a hot button issue, and hopefully we don't get any snow anytime soon here. But no, I think a little bit of everything. I mean, it's important that we look at all options, and the workforce retention, workforce development is super important. It's probably even harder in the private sector to retain employees right now, to be honest. We don't get 100, but there's no employer I know that pays 100% health care. Ours is hundreds of dollars per month out of our pocket, plus a $6,000 deductible. So I think there is room for all of it.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Same question, Scott. How should a city be run? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but like a nonprofit, like a business, like something else?
So reason I said this is that my experience in nonprofit management, I think, can bring a lot to the city council. The reality is that in the nonprofit world, we only have so much money. And yet we're not allowed to just say, well, we only have so much money, we can't provide good services. So we have to be innovative and creative within the budget that exists. And that's much like the city of Minot needs to do in a lot of places like that. I think that, how can we provide the best snow removal with the money that's there? How can we provide the best water and sewer with the money that's there? We can't be going back to the taxpayers on a regular basis asking for more money, so how can we make the best with what we have? And I just think that's extraordinarily important. I've done that my entire career. I'm fortunate enough that we've been able to have a lot of success to squeeze as much productivity out of a little bit of money year after year. We're one of the top, my nonprofit's one of the top in the country as far as production goes within that. So I think that being able to look at that, to challenge people, to create the right environments to be as efficient and as effective as possible.
Okay, thank you. And reminder to everyone who's here in person or joining us online, if you have other questions, please make sure you write them down or include them on the YouTube or Facebook page, and we'll get them asked. We're about halfway done with most of the questions that I've got. Let's keep plowing through it, though. Scott, you get to go first on this one. One of the questions that was asked talked about top goals that you might have to achieve. Many of you, both of you have kind of answered that highest priority question. The other half of the question is, how will you measure your own success or failure? So how do you view your success or failure, realizing that there are other people on the city council and that you're only one vote? Scott, have you go first.
So, yeah, I have talked a lot about kind of the top priorities, but how I measure success as me as a city council member. First and foremost, I want to get engagement. I want to get engagement. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody, whether I agree with them or disagree with them, but I want to invite more people to be engaged. I've been joking a lot lately that, I'm a good old boy. I drive a truck. My favorite thing to do in the wintertime is cut a hole in the ice and spear in Northern Pike. I'm a good old boy, but I'm not part of the Good Old Boys Club. And with that, I can say that I can bring in some new people into the room. I can bring in some small businesses, some people that have never been invited into local government, and really give that opportunity to listen to people in a way that I think we could do a little bit more with. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that I can bring. I've been engaged, as I've said earlier, on local city council level, state level, and national level with advocacy. I've learned a thing or two along the way about, elected officials who are really responsive and elected officials who don't return calls and emails and don't look at you in the public. And I think we need a little bit more of people that want to listen to the community.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, same question. There are big goals out there, big things everyone wants to achieve. How will you measure your success or failure?
Well, I think you got to look at past history to tell you what's going to happen in the future. And the goal is to build relationships, of course, whether it's legislative relationships with the business community, relationships with other council members. I think the motions I made on the budget were all adopted. And I think they were adopted because they were, well thought out, well explained, and build some coalitions to pass them on the last budget. Those cuts alone were about $700,000 plus about $300,000, about $1 million. So I think just building relationships is the way to go. Listening to people's needs. Carrie is one of my favorite people to serve with. Now, who would ever have thought that? But I really enjoy serving with her, and we've got a great, diverse city council right now, and I'm just super positive and super excited for where we're going, and I think we're going to get there because I think everybody's moving in the right direction. The political subdivisions, partners of ours, the parks, Ward County, I think our relationship with them could be better. So it's all a relationship game for me. It's that way in business and my real job as a banker. It was that way in the legislature. It's that way with friends, and I think that's just the way you have to govern, is by listening and building coalitions and relationships.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll start with Roscoe next on this question. The individual asks, any thoughts about increasing public safety personnel staffing, especially hiring and keeping more police?
Yeah, obviously that was a hot topic in the budget. We did authorize 3 positions. Currently, right now, there's 9 positions open. That includes the dispatch. I wish there was something that we could do to fill every one of them, and I would gladly fund the other 3 that we appropriate or we approved as positions without the funding. But we can easily come in and approve the funding if they fill those positions. I think the pay structure, if you look at it, this is a long drawn out answer, but I'll just try to shorten it up. The way the city does the pay, I think, is wrong. The survey system is not fair to the bottom end of the scale. What I mean by that is there was over 40 positions, police positions, that had a 2.5% or lower increase in 2023 in the budget. Well, that's just not fun. It's fundamentally wrong, for one, and it's not smart. These are the positions we need to hire, and we're adjusting the pay because some survey says that we should. To me, that's a big problem. We need to target the areas. There's 4 engineering positions open right now. As of a couple weeks ago, maybe they filled one of them, but I doubt it. So there's some of these key positions we can't fill because of the pay structure that's set up, and obviously the police department needs a new facility once city council moves, and I think that's critically important to recruiting people, police officers, to come to our community. And a safe community is number 1 priority. Like, we need a safe community to grow it, to entice people to come here. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, same question. Any thoughts on increasing public safety personnel staffing, especially hiring and keeping police officers?
First off, I'm extraordinarily blessed that I was the first candidate in anybody's memory to get the endorsement of the local Fraternal Order of Police. And they did that because I work with the police on a regular basis. I've got a great relationship with them, and they know that I didn't promise them anything, but they know that I'll treat them with respect, and I'll look them in the eyes, and I'll tell them the truth, and that means a whole heck of a lot to me. And Our police are absolutely one of the most important things that we need in this community, and we have got to work together and figure out how we can fill those positions as a community and as a city. If it means more money, let's put more money in there. Public safety is one of the essential things that we have to do, and we're not going to attract businesses or people if our community is not safe. And it's amazing to me with all the openings that this police department has had and how much work they've put in, the fact that our crime rate has stayed where it is. It's an amazing testament to these amazing public servants. And I think that we need to do whatever we can as a city to incentivize that, to work with folks. I heard actually Senator Randy Burkhardt at a session I was at yesterday talked about how many Air Force policemen are at the Minot Air Force Base. Well, how are we recruiting them? How are we recruiting, again, colleges and high schools and all the different surrounding areas and things like that? The more that we can do to realize that there's so much good going on in this community. I heard about one of our officers in town who came here from a big city and said, here I actually get to do policing the way that we're supposed to do that. We need to scream that message to policemen all across the country and tell them the awesomeness of Minot and invite them here and put them to work.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Scott, I think you've got the next question coming up. This one, the individual's talking about the wayfinding signage. Now, that's a 3-year program, and only a portion, or only the first phase of that, the first year of that was what was approved for the 2023 budget. Scott, can you talk about the value that might be in there? Obviously, you weren't you didn't vote for that. Would you support that? The full program is $1 million for wayfinding signage in our community. Can you talk about your support or not support for a wayfinding program?
Yeah, I was actually just talking with a small business owner about this very issue. And you know, the reality is that those of us who live in Minot may not see the value of wayfinding signage because we know where things are. We know how to get to the different stores and things like that. But we have got to begin to look at tourism as part of the industry that's going to bring in sales tax, that's going to bring in business, it's going to help keep our property tax low, and all the things that Roscoe and I keep talking about why sales tax is important. And there is tourism here. We have the state fair. We're the only place in the state that has a state fair. We're the only place that has Who's Fest. We also have tournaments, Class A, Class B tournaments, all the different sports things and stuff like that. We need to find ways to incentivize those folks to spend as much as they can while they're here. And if wayfinding signing can help with that, I think it's a good option. Now, how do we pay for that? I'm not really too interested in you know, increasing anybody's property tax or anything like that to pay for wayfind signage. But I think that, you know, using some of the different tools that are available for tourism and things like that, I think that we can find a way to pay for that and make Minot a more welcoming community for the people that are coming here and spending their money in this community.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, same question for you. How do you justify the wayfinding signage? Do you think it's worth it for the full 3 years? Talk about that, please.
So obviously, Paul made the motion. We passed it. It's about $232,000 for the first phase of that. So we'll see how that goes. See how it's accepted by the community. It was paid for through the sales tax stream that trickles down into the Magic Fund. So it was before the Magic Fund drop, basically. So it was sales tax money. You know, economic growth, whatever we can do to entice people to spend money in this community. I think, you know, I spend a lot of time on the road going to volleyball tournaments for my girls. And a lot of the other communities have better facilities that are significantly smaller than ours. And we're traveling out of the city a lot. I don't want to do that. I would rather jump around the city and do youth sports. So I think there's a big opportunity with Visit Minot. We got great leadership there, really good board. I think that partnership with the city through MADC, all of us moving in the right direction, is a better use of funds. But I did support the first tranche, and I'm glad to support it. I think it's a good addition. We'll see how it works once it's implemented. I'm not saying I'll support the full piece to it, the $1 million, but it does come through the sales tax money, which is generally, obviously when people come out of town, they're paying that tax. So they're helping helping to support that. Other communities have it. Every large community generally has some sort of it. It's good at promoting business actually as well, restaurants, hotels, bars and restaurants, et cetera. So I think there is some advantages there because we're promoting ourselves. We're promoting our private business people that are taking risks with their own money. So yeah, I think there's room for that too.
Okay, thank you. Roscoe, we'll start with you on this next one. We've already talked a little bit about property taxes. Both of you have identified kind of the things that you would like to do or to keep that property tax low. What are other ways that we can replace the funding that is there from property tax? I think both of you have mentioned sales tax. Any other ideas there?
Well, I think I see a state representative in no, just kidding. But the funding formula that the city is under right now, the hub city model, was put way back in when I was in the legislature, where hub city money comes for oil impact to the city of Minot. There's another, the prairie dog bill, if anybody's probably heard of that. That's actually a better deal now. So, I mean, I think the state needs to partner a little bit better with the communities and share more of the sales tax dollars that they generate back into infrastructure. Without infrastructure, water, you're not going to grow your communities. I think we got to get more people downtown, for example, in where there's already infrastructure in the ground. The sales tax piece, though, the trend is actually really good that we're seeing right now. We kind of stagnated there for quite a few years at 10 million per 1%. Now we're pushing 11.5 million, maybe higher. We budgeted for 11.5. So I think we're headed in the right direction, and obviously with inflation, generally it's going to be higher because everybody's tickets are higher. So to me, the sales tax is just a more fair tax. Property tax is not inherently unfair the way it's administered, and it's punishing to fixed income seniors, and I think that's something it's got to always be top of mind.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, same question. What are ways to replace the funding that we rely on in property taxes?
Yeah, and in this case, I think Roscoe and I agree on a lot of what he said. I think that working with our state legislature a little bit more, some of the innovative plans that are coming out statewide that can help, bring some of the money that's perhaps being hoarded by the state a little bit right now, bringing it back into our community, buying down some of our debt. I talked to a couple of state legislators a couple of weeks ago that were talking about and potentially taking over maybe a little bit more of the school issues and being able to transfer some money that way. School has obviously been the biggest driver because of the much needed new high school of increased in property taxes. So maybe if the state can buy that down a little bit, that would be a fantastic way. I really think that there's a lot of ways to do that. Yeah, and we sound like broken records right now. It's about economic development and sales taxes. That becomes the replacing thing. The more that we can do that, I'm excited. We had a fantastic, last quarter for sales tax, and it's only going to continue to get better. There's just so much going on. And so when we can build the infrastructure for sales tax, it kind of tends to take care of itself, as long as we don't make irresponsible decisions. And if we start expanding out of our city too much, and it's going to create irresponsible decisions, and it's going to cost us too much.
Okay, thank you, Scott. This next question goes to you, Scott, first. The individual is asking about how you would deal with constituents who have a different opinion than yours. How would you work with that? You know what?
That's something it's actually one of the biggest reasons that I decided to get into this race, to be honest with you. I feel like as a country, and this comes from like the work I was doing on a national level, we've just became so broken. We became so divisive to where we can't actually agree to disagree ever. We can't ever look somebody in the eye and listen and give them the opportunity to talk. And so I don't mind if you disagree. I actually kind of encourage that. Some of the best decisions are made when two people sit down and they have a long conversation about why they believe what they believe, and sometimes they come to a better resolution. I don't want to see the city of Minot become just like every other entity that's out there right now that's so divisive, so broken. We can do better here. And I've spent my entire career listening to people. I've spent my entire life having to sit down and figure out solutions that are win-win for everybody. That's what we need to do. And so if you disagree with me, that's okay. you know what, maybe we disagree on this, but tomorrow we're volunteering at an event downtown. And maybe we disagree on this, but a week later we agree on some other issue. That's okay. We've got to get back to that again.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, same question. How do you work with a constituent, or what would you consider doing with a constituent who had a different opinion than yours?
Yeah, obviously been bombarded with that a little bit from some of the decisions that we made, and I love it. I absolutely love a discussion, good discussion. I'm wrong a lot. I say some dumb things. That's just the nature of it. But I'm always listening, changing minds if it's warranted. I'm a data-driven person by and large. But yeah, there's nothing better than a good political discussion. I just think it's fun. But generally, everybody in the community wants to move forward. I mean, nobody's looking at, if you live here, you're not wanting your community to go backwards. We're all generally pushing in the same direction. We just have maybe different opinions on how we should get there. And that's fine. Like, good government is through compromise. It's not through the holier than thou, ironclad, either you agree with me or you're my enemy. And there is a lot of that going on in this country, unfortunately, right now. But being in the legislature, that's the only way you get things done. If you want to get nothing done, have that attitude. If you want to get something done, build a relationship and understand the person that you're talking to, understand the colleague that you're working with, and craft the best solution, not for yourself, but for the community as a whole. And to me, I work first and foremost for the city taxpayer. I mean, it's just fundamentally, that's my number one priority, and I'm always open to listen to anybody at any time.
Okay, thank you. The next question is broadly talking about ability to work with the legislature, especially when it comes to funding larger projects, flood control and NAWS. Can each of you talk about your ability to work with the legislature? Roscoe, you're first on this one.
Yeah, great question, and it's more important than you think. When you're down there working in the legislature, you're bombarded with all kinds of requests and people. So putting a name and a face to the requests that are happening, because we can't do flood protection without the city. When I was in the legislature, I negotiated with the city at the time. I was working with the city at the time. We negotiated from 60% cost share to a 65% cost share. Never been done. We got it done because it's building the relationships. That was Governor Dalrymple at the time. For this next flood request, we have generally we've been getting about 50 million on average, 52 million. This request is going to be 50% more, almost going to be 76 million per biennium for 5 bienniums. That's going to take some work, and I've actually been working on this with the mayor. We've met with and other council members. Actually, we were just in Cooperstown on Friday working with a legislator there that's likely going to be the appropriations chair in the House. So we're working on this right now. We're prepping this for session. I think I've been in a half a dozen meetings or more with local legislators and the presumed Senate Majority Leader or Appropriations Chair. So you have to build these relationships. You have to build a relationship with the governor, the lieutenant governor. We're all people. We're all pushing in the right direction. And I think that's where I think I have an advantage, where I built these relationships. I already have them right now, and I'll use every tool I can to help the city.
Okay, Scott, same question.
So obviously, unlike Roscoe, I haven't served in the legislature, but I have worked with the legislature for multiple sessions. I've been down there, I've testified, I've showed up, I've met with legislators one-on-one, I've showed up at the public forums that the chamber at that time holds on weekends and had conversations one-on-one with legislators. Let me tell you all a little story about my work with the legislature. Just under 2 years ago, the funding for the place where I work was skipped in the governor's budget. And it was a human mistake, but in a multi-billion-dollar human services budget, they forgot about the funding for independent living. And I'm sitting at home on a Monday night scrolling through that budget, because I know how to have fun, and realized this and found it out. And so then we began to kind of mobilize folks who believed in the work that we do in order to restore that funding. And I reached out to our local legislators. I reached out to the members of the Appropriations Committee, and I talked to them. And I also engaged constituents, because it's not just about us as a lobbyist or a pseudo lobbyist doing it, but it's about the people that are engaged. And we were able to do that. One of my favorite stories with all of that was Representative Nelson out of Rugby said at one point that he was pretty sure that he was personal friends with every single member of our board of directors because we had engaged them on so many levels. So I know how to engage with our local elected officials. I treat them with respect. I think that, they'll tell you that I treat them with respect. I have those conversations. So I just think that there's so many things that can be done, and that's what I look forward to doing. We can do that as a city. I can do that as an elected official, and I really hope that if Roscoe doesn't win this election, he'll continue to be just as engaged on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Scott and Roscoe. Let's talk about, we've got a few more questions here. We might be wrapped up in the next 5 or 10 minutes. If other people have questions online or here in person, we're starting to wind down. One here, though, that we have, are there any, and Scott, you go first on this one, are there any service gaps from a public services standpoint in our community that you would target for specific improvements or specific changes?
Sure, and I haven't figured out how to pay for this yet, but when we talk about snow removal, we have to move beyond our plan to just get the roads clear as quick as possible, and remember that some people in our community walk. And when the sidewalks are always the last thing that are done, it really limits that ability. A healthy community that people want to live in includes a community that people can walk to work. And we shouldn't have them walking to work or people that use wheelchairs wheeling to work in the middle of a street. So we have to figure out a way at some point to make snow removal part of our snow removal on sidewalks, especially in downtown and high trafficked areas, a priority. So that's absolutely the biggest service gap that I would like to see addressed.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, same question. Are there any service gaps from a public services standpoint in our community that you would target for specific improvements or changes?
Yeah, that's not a bad suggestion that Scott mentioned. I think from a public services standpoint, the engagement, and this maybe isn't directly tied to it, but the engagement in the business community, engagement in developers. I mean, the city's got to sell itself, I think, as this is a good place to come. Let's come here. As far as the service standpoint, yes, snow removal can always be better. We had a ton of snow last year. I think they did the best that they could. We did add another two, actually a light equipment operator and heavy equipment operator in the budget for the 2023 budget. So that will help improve, that'll give Dan a couple more employees to help improve that piece of it. I just think Derek does an amazing job of outreach, and I think we can build upon that with partnering with MADC, Visit Minot. I don't think we're all quite pushing in the same direction yet, and I think that's where we need to go. And in turn, that creates more that the engagement of the community and public services, because we don't know what we don't know. So if we're not out there engaging and understanding the needs, whether it's downtown, whether it's a new bus route that's coming to Trinity when it opens, I mean, all of these are important. There was 2 bus positions actually funded for the high school piece, so that's a nice addition. And then for Trinity, obviously that'll be a new route when that opens. So I think there's a lot of good that the city's doing, and we can always do better, though.
Okay, this one comes in from a listener or a viewer. So I'll ask the question just as it's written, and you can answer it how you'd like to. Are you going to work for, and this is for both of you, so we'll start with Roscoe first. Are you going to work for the people and not for yourselves? Do you believe in the Constitution? Roscoe.
Well, that may be the easiest question of all. Absolutely believe in the Constitution. I got one in my desk drawer and I carry it in my bag when I come here. Absolutely work for the people. I haven't taken any pay for the job when I was appointed. I do it. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours preparing while I've been on it, and been blessed to do it because I think I can provide value and have provided value. And we've got a very, very good council right now. I think it's all moving in the right direction. Everybody seems to get along. We all have our positives as far as what different we bring to the council. So I think we're headed in the right direction as this community. I'd like to supercharge the economic growth, obviously. That's a number one priority. But, yeah, I couldn't be more happy with what's going on in the community with what we have. I mean, we've got a Shields that expanded, a Super Target that expanded, a new hospital, new school. We got downtown is vibrant again. We got the Big M coming. We got tracks. So we've got a lot of really good things going on in this community. And I think we just need to keep pushing forward. Use the incentives that are in state law. I don't think we're using them as well as we should. Other communities are. And I don't think we should shy away from that. We should aggressively pursue growth in this community. And that includes business, recruiting businesses.
Okay, thank you, Roscoe. Scott, same questions. Are you going to work for the people and not for yourselves? Do you believe in the Constitution?
I do, in fact, believe in the Constitution. I also have my kids a few years ago decided to get Dad a really cool present. I have this really cool, like, specially bound copy of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that I keep pretty close to me quite often, and I appreciate that. Yes, and the question, I love the question, am I going to work for myself or for the people? And I consider myself first and foremost to be a public servant. It's why I've decided to spend my entire life working in the human services field and in the nonprofit field. It's not the field to go down if you want to become independently wealthy or retire young. So it is who I am. And I think that I really do want to make, and a big point of why I'm running is that I want to engage more people in our process. People are often surprised when I tell them this. The median age in Minot is 32.1 years. We are an exceptionally young community, and we are not doing a good enough job engaging people younger than 32 years. How are we doing, and as I said earlier, how are we engaging our young folks in economic development? How are we engaging the people that are going to be graduating soon? I heard of a committee today, or of another community in North Dakota that has a youth advisory committee to the city council. Why can't we do that? Let's get aggressive with listening to a lot of people. And let's listen to people that aren't from here, that weren't born here. Let's listen to people that maybe don't look like us. Let's listen to people that have different opinions than us. I just think that we can do a lot better job of engaging a whole lot more people in everything.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I'm down to maybe one or two questions left. Scott, we'll go with you on this one. Let's set aside flood protection, because that's a big item. But looking, someone hands you a magic wand. You can have one big wish list improvement to our community. That's something that the city council directly manages. What would that wish be? Again, setting aside flood protection. If you could wave your magic wand and have one big item as an improvement to our community that falls underneath what the city council manages, what would that item be?
I think using economic development dollars for childcare is my biggest thing I would want to see. There are models out there in other communities right now that pay for education reimbursement, that pay for the reimbursement of licensing fees, that help to reimburse for the expansion of property. So if you need to add on to your business, if you need to add, gates and child safety, things like that, that can reimburse for that. There's some that are offering many grants for the expansion of a current program, or many grants for the starting up of a brand new program. Going back to, just looking at the economic impact that we can do to that without a whole lot of money, that can make such a difference for the community. Daycare issues exist across the board. I'm proud of the fact that the governor and lieutenant governor are being super aggressive with this right now, and are going to be bringing some neat plans to the legislature. They can do things the city shouldn't be doing, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't be competitive. We've got it. I want to have the best daycare environment in the entire state, because that'll help recruit businesses and that'll help to recruit people.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Roscoe, you're waving your magic wand. One big wish list item as an improvement to the community underneath something that the city council directly manages or indirectly manages. What would that be?
Can I have two?
This genie's only giving you one wish.
Okay. Well, the one idea that I've floated around for a couple of years, and it's been talked about, it's great that there's a career and tech ed building coming. That is incredibly important for our community. So, but to build upon that, I would love to see one of the Trinity buildings repurposed with state money. Magic Fund money would be the city portion. MSU money, Trinity money, nonprofit, whatever you would have to bring to bear to renovate that, to expand the nursing program and other programs at Minot State, bring some kids downtown. The models work tremendously in every community. It's been done. I mean, think about how great that would be to have 2-3 floors of apartments, affordable housing for students, commercial space on the bottom, let's say, and then a couple floors of classrooms and training. The rooms are already there. We have a huge shortage of nursing nationwide, and particularly in communities in North Dakota, rural communities too. NDSU, when I was in the legislature, that was funded. A huge investment was made in the NDSU nursing program. To me, that's thinking outside the box. We need more housing downtown as well. And I think as Trinity leaves, I don't see that at all as a negative. I think that's a huge positive. It's a huge opportunity. So I think one or both of the buildings should be purposed for that. And I think we could solve a lot of our, I don't know what the traveling nurse program is, but it's usually 100 plus. Well, those aren't people that are living in our community full time. I want people living in our community full time, and housing is a big issue. Whether you're using TIF or other tax incentives to do it. And then I'll be real quick on the other one. A second one I would do would be the municipal auditorium. That has to get renovated at some point. It's a beautiful building. It deserves a renovation, and I think we can play a part now with some community facility sales tax dollars when NAS is completed.
Okay. We are just about wrapped up. I'm going to have you gentlemen think for just a second really fast on the last question, which is the simple one: why should voters vote for you? But before we get to your answers on that, I want to remind people that the election day is November 8th. You can go to our website or social media page or onto the Ward County website and find out exactly where you can vote. The Ward County Commission Candidates Forum, similar to this one, will be held here tomorrow at 6 p.m. So that's Thursday, October 27th. Those will be the candidates for Ward County Commission that will be doing the same thing tomorrow night. So Roscoe and Scott, thank you for coming tonight. We want to give you guys the last chance. Roscoe, you'll go first. Tell us why voters should vote for you in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. It was great. It was fun to be up here with Scott. Very good man, and if either of us win, the city will be well served, I think. I've got a proven record of getting things done and building relationships. Did it in the legislature. In the small time I've been on the council, helped craft some changes to the budget. It's been a pleasure working with the council members, and I think going forward, I think there's a lot of good we can do. My budgeting and business experience is what I do in the real world. That's what I did in the legislature. I think that's the piece that I can be most effective in, as well as pushing economic growth. So those are my strengths. I've got weaknesses, but where I'm weak, the other council members are strong. So I think it's a team approach, and I think we're headed in the right direction. And I certainly would appreciate people's support. It's been very fun. It's definitely a different form of government than the legislature, committee structure generally, a lot of debating. Up here, there's been a little reluctance to do that, and I kind of like that, though. I mean, I think things should be transparent. They should be discussed in the public. People should be held accountable, including the council members and myself. So, I think I can provide value and continue to provide value, and I'm willing to serve. And I, again, work first and foremost for the taxpayer, then for the council, then for the staff. I mean, it's a team. We're a 3-person team: taxpayers, city council, and the staff, the great staff we have, 400 plus employees. So to me, I'm just excited for mine and excited for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Roscoe. Scott, same question. Why should voters vote for you on
So
November 8th?
first off, thank you, Mark, and the Chamber EDC for putting this on tonight and allowing this opportunity to kind of talk about visions and ideas and all that kind of stuff. And I think that we've got a couple of folks up here, a couple of guys up here that want the best for Minot and want the opportunity to be cheerleaders for this community. And I think that we need, if we had about 40,000 more of those, we'd have a lot less problems right now in this community. I've always been a person that's been engaged. I've spent numerous hours volunteering, providing of myself to this community to make it stronger. Sometimes I'm volunteering at a nonprofit event. Sometimes I'm helping with an event downtown. Other times I'm just being a cheerleader for the community and for all the great people that are here. That's the kind of person that I am, is that I offer of my services first. I do not pretend to have all the answers, but I will promise that I will always listen first. And I think that I have a proven life of using that to effectively get things done. And I think that that's the kind of skill set that I can bring to the city council. Just finish up by saying that I love this community, I love serving people, and I'd love to have your vote on November 8th.
Okay, thank you both to Roscoe and Scott. Thank you to the City of Minot for hosting us here tonight. And thanks to all those who are viewing or joining us in person for the MACEDC Candidate Forum. See you tomorrow night.